Hello, this video is a tutorial for the Large Employer Calculator. This calculator is intended to help employers determine whether their organization is an applicable large employer with respect to the Employer Shared Responsibility provisions of the Affordable Care Act, or ACA. Beginning as soon as January 1st, 2015, applicable large employers can be subject to penalties if they do not offer coverage to their full-time employees, or if the coverage they do offer is unaffordable or does not provide minimum value. For purposes of these rules, an applicable large employer, or ALE, is one that employed, on average, at least 50 full-time employees during the prior calendar year. Full-time employees are those that have, on average, at least 30 hours of service per week, with the monthly equivalent being 130 hours in a calendar month. Full-time employees include full-time equivalents, although those employees are calculated as a fraction. The calculator is also designed to help employers determine if they qualify for the one-year delay for ALEs that employed, on average, fewer than 100 full-time employees during 2014. Due to this delay, ALEs with non-calendar year plans may have until the beginning of the 2016 plan year to comply with the Employer Shared Responsibility rules. These employers must also satisfy specific criteria to be eligible for the delay. Note that the purpose of this calculator is to help employers count full-time and full-time equivalent employees. As noted in the disclaimer on the first page, this calculator does not provide legal advice. Results depend on accurate data entry, and users are responsible for being familiar with all applicable requirements and making sure they meet them. The first page of the Large Employer Calculator provides background information on the definition of applicable large employer that we just discussed, as well as the delay for medium-sized employers. Further down, this page also lists information required to use the calculator, specifically the full-time employee count for each month and hours of service for part-time employees for each month. If the employer has seasonal workers, the user will need separate information for those workers. Note that a seasonal worker is a worker who performs labor or services on a seasonal basis, including but not limited to agricultural workers and retail workers who work only during holiday seasons. However, since there is no specific definition of the term, employers can use a reasonable, good faith interpretation of the term seasonal worker until further guidance is issued. The instruction page also includes direction on how to navigate in the tool. It's an Excel spreadsheet, so users can use the tabs at the bottom of the page, but they can also use the navigation arrows at the top. Over on the top right side of the page, there is a section with information regarding the applicability dates of the Employer Shared Responsibility rules, including a link to the final regulations that were released in February 2014. Directly below that section, we see a blue text box with information that explains some special rules related to the ALE determination. The rule for employers that have a number of seasonal workers at certain times during the year and how they can be exempt from large employer status, as well as the transition rule that allows employers to just look back at a period of at least 6 consecutive calendar months in 2014 to measure their size for 2015 instead of looking at the entire calendar year. At various points throughout the calculator, we have embedded additional information which is included in separate tabs in the worksheet. We link directly to those tabs through links in the appropriate sections. For example, you can link to more information on the seasonal worker exception here. The full-time employee page is where users will enter the number of full-time employees for each month. This tab includes specific instructions and additional information, including the definition of full-time employee, how to calculate hours of service, and the employees who need to be counted and those that can be excluded. On this page, first select the year to which the employee count data applies. For example, if we are determining ALE status for 2015, we will select 2014 from the drop-down list because we always look at the prior year. Making this selection will automatically cause 2015 to populate in the box below. Then enter the number of full-time employees for each month, but do not include seasonal workers for the months being counted. Remember that a full-time employee is a common law employee that had at least 30 hours of service per week or 130 hours of service in a calendar month. The employee's hours of service are what's important here, not a prior classification or a part-time or full-time label. Hours of service include each hour for which the employee is paid or entitled to payment for either performing duties or for a period of time when no duties are performed, such as vacation or illness. Hours of service include each hour for which the employee is paid or entitled to payment for performing duties or for a period of time when no duties are performed, such as vacation or sick time. If using the transition rule that allows an employer to measure using a period of at least 6 consecutive calendar months in 2014, only fill in employee counts for those months. All employees of related companies should be included if they meet the definition of controlled group or affiliated service group under Internal Revenue Code Section 414. In our sample tool, we are calculating our status based on the entire year, and the employer has 40 full-time employees for each month, so we have entered that number in the appropriate cell for each calendar month. We move to the next page using the arrow at the top. This is the page where part-time employees, not including seasonal workers, will be tracked in order to calculate the number of the employer's full-time equivalent employees. Note that users will navigate to the tab for each particular month to log hours for those employees. To have the tool run the full-time equivalent calculation, the user will have to enter all hours of service for part-time employees in each month. This page includes specific instructions on what to enter. A part-time employee is a common law employee who had fewer than 30 hours of service per week or 130 hours of service per month. Any employee with 130 hours of service in a month or more should be counted as full-time for that month. Note that the aggregation rules for related companies continue to apply throughout the analysis. If using the transition rule that allows an employer to measure using a period of at least 6 consecutive calendar months in 2014, only fill in employee counts for those months. Here we have part-time employees working in all 12 months. If I click on the January data sheet, we can see the 5 part-time employees and the hours worked during the month. Each employee only has to be credited with a maximum of 120 hours, so if an employee works between 120 and 130 hours, like employee A, the hours will be automatically capped at 120. To get back to the part-time employees page, we click on the navigation arrow at the top. We can see that we have similar information in the other monthly data sheets as well, because we have used the same data for all 12 months in our example. Once data is entered for each month where we had part-time employees, the total hours for these employees will be shown for each month. The calculator then uses this information to calculate the number of full-time equivalent employees. In this calculation, fractions are taken into account. The calculator uses the rounding rule contained in the final regulations, which allows the number of full-time equivalent employees to be rounded to the nearest 100. Click the arrow or select the tab below to move to the Seasonal Workers tab. This page will help the employer determine if it qualifies for the special rule for employers with seasonal workers. If the employer has seasonal workers, they will enter data for those workers on this page. If not, or if they know they will not qualify for the special rule, they can skip this part. The special rule states that if an employer's workforce exceeds 50 full-time employees for 120 days or 4 months or fewer during a calendar year, and the employees over 50 during that time were seasonal workers, the employer will not qualify as an applicable large employer, even if their average is over 50. This special rule also applies for determining whether an employer is a medium-sized employer and qualifies for the 1-year delay, although the applicable number of employees in that case is 99. Full-time seasonal workers are tracked using the chart on the left. Each seasonal worker will be entered into the employee identifier column. If the employee was full-time during that month, the user will enter a 1. If not, enter a 0. The total number of seasonal workers for each month will be shown in the totals chart to the right. Part-time seasonal workers are entered into the table on the right. Each worker is entered into the employee identifier column, and the hours of service for each month are entered into the appropriate column. Part-time seasonal workers are entered in the table on the right. Each worker is entered into the employee identifier column, and the hours of service for each month are entered into the appropriate column for the month. The total number of hours for part-time seasonal workers will be shown in the total hours chart to the right and incorporated into the calculations. To see the results, click the arrow or select the tab to go to the results page. First, the user will have to indicate whether they are using the special transition rule for 2015. This is highlighted in yellow so they don't miss it, as it will show incorrect results if the wrong option is chosen. If the user selects yes, they should have entered data for a period of at least 6 consecutive calendar months. This is mentioned in the instructions on each page. If they have entered data for the entire year, they will get an error message. The results page shows the number of full-time and full-time employees for each month, and then separately shows the number of seasonal workers. Most importantly, this page shows the average number of employees and then an answer on whether the company is a large employer. The answer is either yes, but they may be eligible for the medium-sized employer delay, no, or no because of the seasonal worker rule. In this case, because there are 55 full-time employees, the employer may be eligible for the 1-year delay. More information about that delay is available by clicking in the red text box at the top of the page. Because the results are based on data from the prior calendar year, the ALE status will apply for the entire next calendar year. For example, ALE status for 2015 is determined using data from 2014. If the employer has any fluctuation in employee numbers or hours of service, it will want to run the calculation again for the following year or years as well. But ALE status will not change in 2015 because of changes that occur in 2015. Thank you for viewing this tutorial video. If you have any questions, please contact your broker.